Thank you, Ryan, and good to be here. So how does the region become, I wouldn't say the next, I would say become the Silicon Valley of mining? We have a fabulous panel that represents different parts of the ecosystem in different regions, and I will introduce them each after I just give some contextual remarks. So I'd like to start with a quote from Mark Bristow's discussion on day one, is that the mining industry is not honest about the technology needed to fulfill our promises. And I think that's an important quote because to reimagine mining and to fulfill the needs of society and the whole value chain, we really need to do things differently, and we need to be honest, so that allows us to drive the kind of innovation that we need to do. I think having status quo and incremental innovation is really not appropriate given the enormity of the challenge that lies ahead. And I think it's important to understand, mining is still plagued by what I consider a persistent underinvestment in innovation. Half of 1% of revenue compared to the oil industry, 5%. A dearth of venture capital. It's all very well to make these statements, but in my view, the result of that is, and I think we need to change this, is we ended up with research that's often stranded in universities that are doing great work. We have companies that are perpetually small companies. And the result of that is they can't continually invest in the kind of innovation, ongoing R&D that's necessary. So that fundamentally has to change. And also mining, as a result of that, is not seen as an attractive industry by the bulk of venture capital funds that work across multiple industries and key technologies that we need. And I sit on the board of 2 venture funds in the Valley and multiple startups, and I see and hear that every single day in terms of the interaction. So I think it's really important. So given this is around how do we make this the Silicon Valley, what is Silicon Valley? Because it's a term that's thrown around, and we know it's a part of the world in Northern California, but in my mind, it's a concept. Silicon Valley is a concept. And I think that's a point I want to reiterate. And I had the fortune of, a few years ago, of sitting down with Professor Jim Gibbs, who now is 94. And when he was the Dean of Engineering of Stanford, he is considered one of the fathers of Silicon Valley. And I asked him, what is Silicon Valley? And he said, Silicon Valley is a set of principles and characteristics. He said, those characteristics are, 1, world-class research, and universities like Stanford and Berkeley with massive amount of research dollars, which come from government and private enterprise, a pool of entrepreneurs from around the world, all in the single region, a vast pool of risk capital, venture capital. But he said all of that is for nothing. The key aspect of Silicon Valley and the secret sauce is this free flow of information and ideas that are based on trust. There is no NDAs. Everybody shares this, knowing no one's going to steal anyone else's idea. And that is the concept of Silicon Valley. And also, it's no longer just about digital. Silicon Valley is the epicenter of autonomy. Most of the autonomy cars are there. Tesla was created in Silicon Valley. SpaceX, Silicon Valley, clean energy. And more importantly, corporate venturing arms of companies like Saudi Aramco are actually present. And I will say, mining is singularly the only industry on the planet, that has 0 representation in Silicon Valley, the only industry, which is rather shocking. So given that, how do we go about creating this region as the Silicon Valley? So what I'm going to do is I'll introduce our panelists first, and then I'll go around and ask them randomly, actually, not in order like that, to give us 2-minute remarks on that. So immediately here is Chris, who's the CEO of Austmine, and she's been on a number of other panels. Next to her is Keith Spence, Chief Executive. Chris is from Australia, I want to make sure. Keith Spence, Chief Executive of Global Mining, representing the world of capital from Toronto. Saud, Mandil, VP of Digitalization from Mandil. Then we have Justin Bain, CEO of 3ME Technology from Australia. Eissa, who's Senior Vice President of Worley here in Saudi Arabia. And last, Hassan Mehmood, who's representing the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Resources from Pakistan. So welcome, everyone. This is a fantastic group. Yeah. So Chris, let's start off with you. So how do we go about making this the Silicon Valley of the region?
Well, thank you, Peter, and it's great to be here. What I think we really need to do is build on the conversation we've been having this afternoon about technology and focus in on innovation and focus in on that ecosystem that really fosters it. And you mentioned a strong ecosystem being core to a Silicon Valley. And really, one of the parts of that ecosystem that we really haven't talked about very much over the last 2 days has been the supply sector and the suppliers, the many hundreds of companies that work to make mining work, that work to make mining more productive, that work to make mining more sustainable. And if you think about it, the suppliers are the sustainable legacy of mining itself. Now in Australia, Austmine, the company I work for, we represent suppliers, and in Australia we call it the Mining Equipment Technology and Services Sector, or MET sector. And we've really worked over the last 30 years to foster that sector. And in Australia, it's a $114 billion sector annually, $114 billion, and we export $18 billion of technology and services every year. So it's a substantial part of the economy in Australia. And if you look at the supply sector or the MET sector and you think about ESG, it's really that S part of ESG, because the supply sector are the local communities. It creates jobs. It creates the high-tech jobs that our young people want to work in. And so it's an extremely important part of the ecosystem, and that's what I think needs to be grown and fostered.
Great, thanks, Chris. Really important point. I'll jump right over to Eissa for comments on this.
Good, thank you. I believe that I will not add a lot of things from after what I heard yesterday and today. And to summarize what I will see to go to Silicon Valley from mining. I believe that we hear the great support from government to act like an entrepreneur, to act like a funding the projects, putting R&D in place, which they will put the foundation to take that to the next level. Another important thing, that's technology, which I think my colleagues will talk more about it, and a lot of discussion happened yesterday and today about it. Technology, you need to adapt it fast.
Yeah.
And when you adapt something fast, maybe you do some mistakes, and you need to correct yourself fast. Adapting the right technology fast and keep correcting yourself. This is another foundation. This is what we saw in Silicon Valley and all these giga projects and giga companies growing in Silicon Valley. Next one, which I believe the kingdom is in a very advanced position, which is renewable energy. We heard every day about great projects, and renewable energy is a big empowerment for mining and to be a Silicon Valley for future for mining. Last one, which I heard it almost in every session during today and yesterday, which is talent. I heard it multiple times, and people repeat this tons of time about the talent. Mining need a talent, and without talent, we cannot make it happen. And maybe we need to add later on in the discussion today about how we can create the talent, how we encourage the new generation to be green for the future and support the mining sector for future.
Thank you. Yeah, no, really important points as well. So over to you, Keith.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do when you're thinking about Silicon Valley, you start asking yourself, what about Silicon Valley? It's technology. And when you look at technology and you compare it to the mining space, specifically exploration, it has the same key elements. High risk, takes a while before the idea becomes something highly viable, as in the case of developing a mine or ultimately commercializing your product. There's a significant amount of feeling that I am going to take this risk. You need to be able to say, I am willing to take this risk, And this is something that you find in the exploration sector. One of the things that we said, oh, what are we going to do with respect to Silicon Valley, I looked at what are the particular areas in the mining space where we would have a quasi-Silicon Valley. A good example is Toronto, the mecca of mining. You can look at Perth in Australia, and to some extent Vancouver and Sydney, Australia. And all the elements of Silicon Valley are there. Talent, as was mentioned by my colleague, government support, research and development, lots of startups, and a willingness to take risk. And I'll leave it there for the next rounds.
Keith, thanks very much. That was great. And Saud, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Completely, I'd like to emphasize some of the points made by the fellow panelists. So to become the next Silicon Valley of mining, it's a framework. It's a complete ecosystem, the different principles and characteristics that we need. So some of these do exist already in the kingdom, composed of the large endowments of resources already available in the kingdom. The government support, which is truly placing mining and minerals as one of the very important pillars of Vision 2030, transforming the economy of the country, counting on this important sector to be the third pillar of our economy. I think the workforce has been spoken about. We have young, hungry population, hungry to work, hungry to learn and to prove themselves, utilizing advanced technologies and innovations. We spoke about technologies and innovations. It's worth noting that does not mean necessarily all of these technologies should come from Saudis. Yes, our universities are doing some advanced research in certain areas, and definitely we are in Ma'adin collaborating with many universities locally and globally, but also becoming a global hub for this. We will be encouraging and inviting all of the advanced research in this area to come and truly invest in Saudi. And I think you heard about the great efforts that our government have put wisely into encouraging this sector, be it the capital encouragement and the funds availability, be it the regulatory encouragement and all the ease of doing business and ease of inviting these companies. And also, last but not least, very important aspect when it comes to becoming the next global hub of a Silicon Valley for mining itself is the support together from collaborative sort of fashion and partnership, where even big brothers, and I would call Ma'adin here a big brother for all the companies that would come if we are aiming to have this kind of attraction for all of these companies to come and invest in our country, that we will support, we will invest, and we will take them into this journey for a success, for a future of mining, for the entire kingdom, and for globally for this important sector.
Right. Saud, thank you, and I love your passion. I'm coming. Yeah, we're going to make it happen. Justin.
Yeah, fantastic act to follow there. I mean, coming from a startup background, to me, it's about vision, which the kingdom does so well. It's about ambitious but achievable goals. It's about a flexible, resilient strategy across whether it's minerals, technology, supply chain, people. As has been mentioned, people are our most critical resource, and it comes to the people. And what Silicon Valley has done so well is attract the global talent. And as mentioned, the opportunity to attract a global talent in the mining and mets sector. It's about, ideas are easy. It's about execution. It's about world-class execution.
Thank you, Justin. Absolutely. We'll talk about that a bit more later. Absolutely. Hassan, bring us home on this one.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm from kind of a conservative school of thought. So starting up with the concept of ESG, I think there are three major elements, most important elements in mining industry. One is the community. And when we talk about the community, we just don't talk about the kind of charity for the community. We want their equal participation for the community. So that's really very important to me when going into a new venture of mining. Then, of course, is the environment. And the third and the most important thing to me is the precision and the technology that's involved in mining. So let's not just be mining for the sake of mining. It's not the quality, the quantity of mining, it's not the quantity of product, it's really the quality that we want to take out. So since minerals are God-given gift to the humanity, and they've been left out to us by our past generations, we should be really careful extracting those minerals, extract as much as we require, and leave the rest for our future generations. So strategic mining, purposeful mining, would be much more reasonable than mining for the sake of mining. Yeah. In the context of Silicon Valley, I see that the time is ripe. That the advancement in technologies have gone so far that now we can be sure about what kind of product do we need and how much and how precisely can we take it out. So I'm really hopeful that this initiative by the Kingdom for advancement in mining industry in the next 10 years would also be a lead for us, countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan and those which are highly mineral rich, to do focused mining rather than just mining.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hassan. So I guess what we heard actually was strategy from everyone. So this is how we would go about it and the strategy. So just a couple of contextual points, and then we're going to jump into the hard part of execution. Is I was just reading in 2021, venture capital invested globally doubled from the average of the last 5 years. So $690 billion was invested in startups in 2021, $690 billion. And whilst the biggest number in there went to Silicon Valley, the one thing that COVID has accelerated is the distribution to many places, not only in the US, but globally, of that venture capital and startups. And I think that's exciting that everybody recognizes Silicon Valleys in a regional context can exist anywhere and everywhere. In one stat, even though Asia didn't get more capital than the US, more startups were funded in Asia than in the United States for the first time ever. So I think, this notion of it only can happen there, COVID has helped accelerate, dispel that notion and distribute everything everywhere. So that's really exciting. His Excellency, the Minister, yesterday said something really interesting. He said, strategy often looks good on paper, but it's really hard to execute. And I've heard that a lot. So we're going to click in now and going to ask each of the panelists around a specific area of execution and what's important. So again, Chris, I'm going to pick on you to talk about, we've talked a little bit, but why is collaboration and partnering important? What are some of the challenges because it's easy to say, hard to do. So spend a few minutes on that, please.
Well, if we're going to have a really strong ecosystem, we need to collaborate. And we need to approach our relationships from a more transformational aspect than a transactional aspect. And one of the things that has changed in Australia is that there is a real willingness and openness to collaborate. And we're moving into a real open innovation space. One of the projects that we've been working on over the last probably almost a year is the Charge on Innovation Challenge. And this is a challenge that was put together by BHP, Rio Tinto, and Vale. And if I ever thought that those three majors would be working together, it's incredible, very unusual. Where they are looking at the electrification of large haul trucks on open pit mines. And they know this challenge is too big for them to solve individually. And they knew it was too big to solve just the three of them. So we've been working with them. We brought other patrons, what we call on board. So we have 21 mining companies across the globe working on this challenge. We put out an expression of interest. We got responses from over 300 suppliers from 32 countries. And not just from the mining industry, but from all industries, or all a diversity of industries. And we've whittled down the submissions with all the mining companies working together. And in fact, Justin's company is in the short list, so you can tell that, you know, the quality.
No prejudice on this panel that he put together. Yeah.
Quality of what he does. But it's really exciting that we've gotten together in this collaborative framework to crack these major challenges. And that is what we're going to have to do, because we've talked about it over the last couple days. There are a lot of challenges before us, and only by working together can we overcome them.
Chris, that's awesome. I think 2 key points there is not only the collaboration within the industry, but through an open challenge concept, you're getting suppliers from other industries that haven't thought about mining in the past.
Absolutely.
That's what's really exciting. Does anyone else want to add into the collaboration? I know we all have thoughts around that. Otherwise, we can go to the next one. That's fine. You did such a good job, Chris. You just nailed it. And congratulations, by the way. I think that's a tremendous gain. So Justin, just want to talk, I mean, you live in a startup, and even in your prior career in the military, everything was about speed and execution. And we live in an industry that's very risk averse and tends to be a bit slow, right? Because everything's long cycles. So talk about a little bit about risk taking and doing things fast and minimal viable everything, if you like. So.
Yeah, fantastic, Peter. I mean, coming from a startup background, it's always around getting to that minimal viable product, you know, as fast as possible, and then trying to break it, and then, you know, continuing to evolve it. And I think from a risk perspective, I mean, risk is everywhere. Yeah. So it's about identifying risk and then managing risk. You know, the worst type of risk is the unknown unknowns, as we've seen during the pandemic. And that's where a flexible, resilient strategy comes into play, where you can adapt quickly. Yeah. From a speed perspective, yes, I mean, speed is such a critical tenet for startups and for business. And I think that, you know, startups are obviously able to move a lot faster because they're not bogged down by governance, smaller teams, make decisions faster. And for me, I guess coming from a military background, I guess, you know, often falling back on the Boyd's OODA loop of observe, orientate, decide, act. And then obviously new data comes in, new information comes in, and then you observe, orientate, decide, act again, and you continue that process, which talks to, you know, the evolution of the product.
Cool. I will ask one follow-up question is, often the culture of safety is used, I think, as an excuse not to do anything that has an element of risk, and they hide behind that. Do you want to kind of unpack that for it? Because I don't think that's true. It doesn't have, other industries have risk and safety, but still do risky things. Do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think from a global innovation perspective, you know, Australia, I believe, is a leader in mining safety. Yeah. And obviously, there's risk everywhere. Yeah. We're able to manage that really effectively. And I see that, you know, from a technology perspective, you know, the mining industry is a perfect proving ground for technology. You know, you've got machines operating around the clock, now the digitization, automation. So it's, you know, we talk about Silicon Valley and the underrepresentation of the MET sector. However, you know, there's a lot of fantastic innovation on those same pillars you've mentioned that are happening globally in the mining sector. That these other industries can benefit from, and also from a speed perspective that the mining industry can benefit from, taking these lessons and technologies from other industries and putting them to play in the mining industry.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Yeah. So if we're going to jump over to Eissa now. So obviously we can talk everything we like. If we don't have people and we don't have skills to act on all this, it's kind of for naught. And there's been a lot of conversations around how we attract talent, male and female, into the industry, because there's intense competition for talent in every area of discipline that the industry needs to get. So, Eissa, do you want to kind of tackle that one for us?
Yes, for sure. As an engineering company, working in an engineering company in Saudi Arabia with almost 2,000 people on ground, supporting different sectors in the kingdom. Mining, one of the difficult sectors to find people. Today, this morning, just a fresh information, we were in a global strategic discussion about mining, how we can co-op with the need of the mining. And talent and finding talent was the top priority for Worley globally, not only in Saudi Arabia, globally. We have a big shortage in that domain, And that domain, if you want to fill it with the talent, it's not 1 year or 2 years. You talk about years and years. And you need to build the talent for the next 20, 30 years to serve. During our discussion in the back, before the session, we were talking about how we can find people to operate all this mining after we complete the infrastructure. We hear it in a different session. And one of the challenge for me to find a great talent, local, Saudi, male or female, working at the image about mining. The image about mining, maybe we see it in the movies, okay? It's people coming out from mining with the disaster, with the safety issues, with a lot of things. I think changing the mindset about mining. Mining is a safe. And I agree with Justin that about Worley as an Australian company, we pay a lot of attention for safety. I believe we need to work hard in changing the image of mining. Second, we need to work hard together. The owners, the government, the companies, the services provider, everyone has to work to encourage new talent to come to the sector. Not because it's a remote areas, most of the stuff is remote areas. And we need to tell them this is the future of Silicon Valley in Saudi Arabia or globally. And that has to be started not from university or maybe high school or maybe earlier. And this is a huge campaign. I'm looking forward for more partners to join me. Also, we have a great experience in Worley. We started I think, 12 years back in Morocco in one of the company joint venture with the government. And we followed that with the academy in Saudi Arabia. And we are willing. And I never felt bad that to see my teams that grow up in Worley to go outside. I have people in all the sectors. I don't feel bad that the people going out. But this is not one man show or one company or a government. It's everyone job. Yeah. And we need to start now to co-op with the great dream the country is trying to do in the kingdom about mining.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So now to the important thing. If you don't have people, you can't do it. If you don't have capital, you definitely can't do it. And Keith, obviously you straddle the world of capital for mining development, but also venture. And we know it's hard to get capital for mining projects. It's probably harder to get venture capital. So do you want to talk about that, particularly the venture capital part of that?
One of the things I didn't say earlier, but venture capital or capital is the glue that really gets the mining space done. And if you look at circumstances for example, in Toronto. Toronto is, some people would consider Toronto, Canada, as if there was a Silicon Valley, it would be in Toronto. And the glue that makes Toronto successful is venture capital. The Toronto Stock Exchange, for example, has 60% of its listed companies in the mining space. More than 2/3 of the companies have projects around the world. The thing that people look forward to is when you make an investment in a junior company, and in this case a startup, you're looking for a significant return. You want a return, several multiples. And this is the kind of dream that maybe I would be successful in if I had invested in that stock. If I had invested in this company, I'll make a killing, so to speak. And this is the same kind of thing you see in Silicon Valley with Facebook and some of the big stocks, Google, for example. So in Toronto, you found that most of the people who are involved in the venture capital space are very, very focused on taking risk and wanted to be involved in that big dream, the dream for the future.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. I think risk capital is so important, and I think your analog to exploration is important. I mean, most venture capitalists in Silicon Valley work on the rule that only 1 in 10 companies they invest in will be successful. And that's a high degree of risk. It's not that extreme, but and I see a lot of venture capitalists say, I'm a venture capitalist, but I want to invest only in companies that are profitable. And I go, well, you're not a venture capitalist if that's the case, because that's not taking risk.
Yeah, and one of the point that is important, you have to have transparency.
Yes.
One of the things, for example, in the Canadian market, there's a strong system of standards and rules. The gold standard, for example, in investing in a mining project is something some of you might hear. It's 43-101, which is the standards of disclosure. How do you disclose what your project is, who are the people behind it, etc. Those standards are globally recognized. If you are to develop a Silicon Valley here in Riyadh, you'd need to have a system of standards. For example, I co-chair and the founder of one of the globally recognized standards in valuation, the SimVal standards, which are used globally. Those are standards. How do you value a mining project from early stage to late stage? How much is it worth? How much is a company worth when it's just an exploration idea? How much is it worth when the company is mid-stage? How much is it worth just before it goes into production? And then standards with respect to resource and reserve. In Australia, it's the JORC code, which most of you have heard about, but there's also the CIM standards, and those standards are also in South Africa. How do you quantify a resource or reserve, be it inferred, be it indicated, be it measured? Those are the things that makes a Silicon Valley in mining a reality.
Great. Thank you, Keith.
Can I add something there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Please, Chris.
So the capital for innovation doesn't always need to come from venture, of course. Yeah. And it's really important that what is developed is also funded by the operators themselves, willing to take a punt on that new application. It's hard to move out the old legacy systems and put in new technologies. But if that isn't done, it's not necessarily going to be funded from venture.
Yeah.
So investing in that innovation and rewarding innovation through a purchase order, for instance, is very important.
I think it's critical. I think rewarding innovation of that, because that's really important. And actually, that's a nice transition to Saud as Madin. But obviously, we're talking about Madin obviously taking the role of a national champion. So Saud, what does that mean? What does that look like in the terms of Silicon Valley?
Thank you, Peter.
And write lots of purchase orders, by the way, please.
Absolutely. So that's a very important role, right? The local mining champion. That role comes with great responsibilities and commitments. So Ma'aden has put great efforts into this and will continue to put great efforts into this. I might put and map these responsibilities on 3 levels. So the first one is on the international or into the industry itself and globally. So Ma'aden has made great commitments into ESG targets and decarbonization targets. So the mining and minerals as an industry, always we are claimed and we are one of the first industries to be looked at when it comes to climate change and problems around ESG. So we are very focused and committed to the targets we are putting into that regard. In addition, promoting the industry when it comes to commitments to standards, when it comes to boosting research around the world, when it comes to adopting technologies also and advanced technologies, and putting some of the venture capital investment into certain areas and that will promote the industry further. From there, I want to also shed some light on the national level. So when it comes to the economy, so Ma'aden has very aggressive targets and work that are worked toward. when it comes to the GDP, when it comes to the employment and the role of a local champion in that regard. When it comes to social, as promoting, the societies where we do some of our work, and there are great examples to be looked at where some of that, because mining sometimes is in remote areas, so companies and local champions have it as a responsibility to grow these areas and to promote these areas, be it in terms of building schools, building roads, building the needed infrastructure and the logistics and so on, and also to promote that sort of industry. And we spoke about the workforce and so on, and to build the attraction into that industry within the nation. And the last level to be looked at also, which is the company level itself and all of its affiliates, be it the employees of that company, of a local champions, where these employees are growing to truly play a larger role into that sort of a great ambition going forward to attract further players and additional players into the region, be it also to our suppliers and our customers, and also to promote our products towards. So it's truly a role that requires setting an example across different levels.
Yeah, and I think, I think it is a very great responsibility for the nation. So I think the kingdom on its own is kind of interesting, I think, for mining. But I think the key thing that the ambition is about the region, because that is something you need to pay attention to. So Hassan, from the perspective of Pakistan, how important, tell us about the importance of the region and the role that the broader region can play in this.
Well, this is extremely important. It's very, very important for us to find leads into scientific and technological advancements in mining sector and industry. And the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia moving towards the concept of Silicon Valley in minerals would definitely give Pakistan and its people lots of opportunities to learn and to follow. In fact, Pakistan has very old institutions. The British created the Geological Survey of Pakistan about 100 years ago. And then we have the Pakistan Mineral Development Corporation, and we have over 6,000 mines, copper, gold, coal, and lots of others. And the region as a whole, including Afghanistan and all the mountainous areas, are full of natural resources. As per our estimates, less than 30% of the area has been surveyed. So over 70% of the region is still unexplored and unsurveyed. I'm sure we have a memorandum of understanding with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which was signed in 2019 for mutual cooperation in the sector of minerals exploration. And we are in constant touch with the officials of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We are here to offer our support and help, and also learn from how the regulatory framework in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been liberalized, so that we can also take leads from that and get rid of the old-fashioned laws about mines and minerals, and try to come into the mainstream. So I'm sure it will be beneficial not only for the two countries, but for the entire world as we try to explore resources from one place to another.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So I just want to tackle a couple of other interesting areas that we've touched on in our various discussions. And one is focus, okay, because I think, and Chris, I'm going to pick on you after this, is that, if you look at the mining value chain, and if we wanted to be a Silicon Valley, well, we could cover every single area, but, focus is important. So, Chris, when you said that, what were you thinking?
Well, to really stand out and build something, you need to have a strategy and focus, as you just said. And to me, it would really make sense for this area to focus on energy. Yeah. Become the leader in energy. In mining, we talked about it today, the hydrogen, everything around that. And there's plans around that already. Yeah. So to make this region really stand out as the Silicon Valley, or whatever you're going to call it, but it's that energy piece. The second thing in that would also be water. Yeah. Because water, as we know, is critical for mining. And this area, with the challenges it's faced in the past, or it's currently facing, has a lot of good technologies developed around water and could really attract others to come into this area to innovate and to help solve some of those challenges around energy and water.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Just leverage the strengths we have and focus, and it is an opportunity. That's a gap. Anybody else on this issue of focus?
I will keep repeating people, and we have to accept mistakes.
Yeah.
And we have to help people to understand if they are doing mistake, they are not doing bad job. The best way to learn is from mistakes.
Yes, absolutely.
I might add on focus itself. So it's very interesting the amount of efforts that the kingdom is putting into energy. I want to second Chris on the importance of that point. The research and the investment that is put into the advanced technologies are truly unprecedented.
Yeah.
So a focus into that area truly will encourage the mining and minerals to truly grow and to achieve the ESG targets of decarbonization.
And I think critically too, it's credible, because if the region and the kingdom go energy, people go, I get that. And I think also it's a competitive advantage too. So always think of competitive advantage. Keith, what
and just another point with respect to capital, you want to have a capital throughout all stages of the project. So we talked a lot about Silicon Valley and venture capital, but there's also later stage capital, which you still find in Silicon Valley, and then development capital and capital to go into production, which would be in many cases debt and large sums of money. And if you look at, and I use again the Toronto example, the full suite of financing and the full suite of capital from early stage conception right up to production, you have different types of capital, different folks for different folk.
Yeah. I think, Keith, that's critical, because a lot of the technologies, for example, in early stage pilots, so I'm on a company that does ion-based lithium extraction. So when it gets to pilot projects, you know, that's early stage project funding. It's not venture capital anymore. So it's a really, really important point.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think we've just got time now for one takeaway from everyone. So I'm just going to ask everyone if there's one thing you'd like to leave for the kingdom. So in context of how this region becomes the Silicon Valley of mining, let everyone know so that somebody can be writing down these are the 6 things they must do to become Silicon Valley. So Chris, want to start? I'll just go through one by one.
Quite simply, innovation and collaboration is the key.
Innovation and collaboration is the key. Thank you. Keith?
I would say have a vibrant exploration sector. No exploration, you don't have a Silicon Valley. You need to have big dreams. You need investors to want to have that big dream and make a big killing, even though it may or may not happen. So you must have a vibrant exploration sector. And if you look at Toronto, you look at Sydney, you look at Vancouver and Perth, they all have a vibrant exploration sector.
Yeah, no, Keith, that's important. At the Ministers' Roundtable, as identified by the Minister, of one of 3 areas was the lack of exploration, and that needs to be built up. Absolutely. Saud?
I'd like just to leave a takeaway message here that truly Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is putting great emphasis and great efforts into this. So completely encourage all the players into this and all the small startups that might have some technologies and some research into these areas to truly consider investing in Saudi, coming to Saudi. This is a very promising sector, mining and minerals. And from all aspects, we are after this to make it a success.
Fantastic. And I think this summit is a good first step in making that happen. Absolutely. Justin?
Yeah, Peter, I would say that reinforce that people are our most critical resource.
Yeah.
And that we need to invest in our people. It's a finite resource. We can't grow it overnight, particularly for skilled positions. So invest in people, look after people, and through that we can solve these challenges.
Fantastic. Thank you. Eissa?
Yeah, speed and agility. Let us be speed and let us push and roll out the plans as soon as possible.
Fantastic. And I think I just noticed you two just swapped concepts. You did people and you did speed. I love it. Thank you. Hassan?
Yeah, Peter, to me, research and development coupled with widespread education at all segments of mining industry would really help move fast.
Yeah. Thank you. We've been very efficient, actually, so we do have 2 more minutes. So I'm going to use those 2 minutes. So I think what's interesting is what's the role of government in all this? What's the role of the kingdom and its government in this? Does anybody want to venture on that? Saud, I might pick on you first since you're the local.
Sure.
So where's the government? So in America, we'd say, government, get out of the way and leave us alone because you guys suck at this. But that's not the case in a lot of other countries. So
that's one of the greatest advantages we have in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So the government is encouraging and boosting and promoting all of these technological advancement into this sector, into promoting this sector. So great efforts have been put. Vision 2030 have strategic objectives that are targeting actually mining and minerals to play a great role into the economy, as we spoke about the 3rd pillar of the economy, in fact, and also to add the fact that NIDLIB and the National Industrial Development and Logistics Program as one of the Vision 2030 programs, and also the ministries, be it Ministry of Investment, the Industrial and Mineral Affairs, putting great efforts into the regulatory side, into the investment side, into truly the collaborative side and the workforce side. So all the elements collectively will work to make that happen.
thank you.
Yeah, and Peter,
Hold on, I just got to, this gentleman took the time to come up and tell me something, so I do want to say what he said.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things is incubation and accelerators, and this is something your role is very, very critical. Incubate, accelerate not only exploration companies, but technology companies. And I think that's an important point not to be lost. So sorry, Keith.
No, I was just following up what he said about the role of government.
Yeah.
If you look at the original Silicon Valley, the Defense Department of the U.S. played a very, very important role in development of Silicon Valley.
And still do.
And still do. Yep. And the internet, the U.S. government had a role in that, the GPS, and these are all products of Silicon Valley.
Yeah. I think it's important to know the U.S., the government is funding a lot of the basic research and applied research in Silicon Valley. So now we are done. So please join me in thanking this wonderful panel. Thanks, guys. You did awesome.